cage, it is conical in shape. In its upper part, it's narrow, and as we go down, it becomes wider till we reach to the seventh rib. And below down, it again start getting narrower. The rib cage is partially made up of bone and cartilage. The bones who contribute in making my rib cage, we have 12 pair of ribs, a sternum in front and the vertebral column behind. Now let's look at the anterior wall of my rib cage. There we can see this structure. That is my sternum, and this sternum has three parts. This is the manubrium part, this is the mesosternum or the body, and then this is the xiphisternum or the xiphoid process. So these structures are making the anterior wall of my rib cage, and this anterior wall is shorter than my posterior wall. To look at the posterior wall, we have to rotate this skeleton. Now look at these 12 thoracic vertebrae are contributing in making the posterior wall of my rib cage. And if we compare the length, the height, this is almost double. The posterior wall is almost double if we compare with the anterior wall. And laterally, what we can see these ribs which are going forward. And if you pay attention, these ribs, the space in between these ribs, it is more wider in the front, and as it goes backwards, it becomes narrow and narrow and narrow. The posterior wall, as has been said before, is made up of 12 thoracic vertebrae, and these vertebrae, if you look at them, the upper vertebrae, they are more like the cervical vertebrae, and when we go down, they are transforming into the lumbar vertebral shapes. So there is a transition. There is no abrupt change, but slowly and gradually the structures start changing. Now if we look at the ribs, we have 12 ribs on each side of my rib cage. And if you can see the space between the ribs, we call this space as intercostal spaces, and we have 11 pair of intercostal space. And below to my 12th rib, the space, there is no space because there is no rib 13. So that area is known as the subcostal space. If you look at carefully, anteriorly, the distance in between this intercostal space is wider, and as we go backwards, it starts becoming narrow in each intercostal space. Posterior part of my each rib is given a name called the head, and this head articulates with the thoracic vertebrae. And the anterior part of my rib, it goes and attached to a strip of a cartilage. And if you can see the pattern, the upper 7 ribs, they articulate directly with different parts of my sternum, manubrium, the body, and the xiphoid process. Now if you look at the rib number 8, 9 and 10, look at it. Their costal cartilages, they are articulating with the cartilage above respectively, and they are making a pattern on both the sides, and this is called the costal margin. Now look at the upper ribs. As we have said earlier, they are articulating directly with the sternum through their own costal cartilage. So these ribs are said to be the true ribs, and my rib number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7, you can see that they have their own costal cartilage, and which makes the contribution between the sternum and the rib. But when we go down below to rib number 7, there we can see rib number 8, rib number 9 and rib number 10. They are sharing, and these are those ribs who are sharing the costal cartilage. They are known as the false ribs. So my rib number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7 are the true ribs, and rib number 8, 9, 10 are the false ribs. Now if you look at the rib number 11 and rib number 12, what is so particular? They are ending at a cartilage, but this rib fails to reach to the sternum, both my 11th and 12th ribs. So these ribs are called floating ribs. So in categorically, so we have true ribs, false ribs and floating ribs. Now if you look at any intercostal space, these intercostal spaces, they are covered by 3 muscle layers. The outermost muscle is called external intercostal muscles, and then in between we have internal intercostal muscle, and the innermost muscle is given the name of innermost intercostal muscle. The external intercostal muscle and internal intercostal muscle are continuous, but the innermost layer is a patchy layer, and we have different names of the muscles which belongs to this innermost layer. Now look at the upper part of the rib cage, and this is the superior thoracic aperture. Now we are looking at superior thoracic aperture. The anatomist call this superior thoracic aperture as the thoracic inlet, but clinicians, especially the vascular surgeons, radiologists, neurosurgeons, they prefer to call this superior thoracic aperture as thoracic outlet. Now we are looking at inferior thoracic aperture, and now again anatomists call it thoracic outlet, but clinician calls it thoracic inlet. So anatomist, superior thoracic aperture, thoracic outlet, but clinicians, thoracic outlet, thoracic inlet. Don't get confused with this overlap of the terms. Now this inferior thoracic aperture, for simplicity, just remember this way. This is inferior thoracic aperture, and that one above was my superior thoracic aperture. Now this inferior thoracic aperture is almost closed by a dome-shaped muscle, and that muscle is my diaphragm. It's primarily have muscular part, but in the middle it becomes aponeurotic. In the middle it becomes fibrous. This is jugular notch, and if you roll down, we can reach to this place where the manubrium meets with the body of the sternum, and this is the angle of Louis. And what corresponds to this, we have the costal cartilage of my second rib, and this is my second rib, and then the space above is the first intercostal space, the second intercostal space, and the third intercostal space. Now we are looking at superior thoracic aperture or thoracic outlet, and if you pay attention, this is my clavicle and this is my first rib. Between my clavicle and first rib, we have the passage of this neurovascular bundle, and there you are looking at what? You are looking at subclavian artery, which becomes axillary artery, and then you are looking at part of the cords of the brachial plexus. Now, in this condition, which is called thoracic outlet syndrome, these structures can be compressed, and as a result of that, symptoms start appearing. The most commonly involved structure here is the brachial plexus.